to Table Topics. Today we're going to talk about a polarized issue that's been on a lot of blogs lately, and that is Prop 8.
I was recently in Miami, and there was the Florida college football game going down, and a whole bunch of Oklahomers were there. And somehow I got onto this topic, and wow, you have to be careful in such a red state talking about this kind of issue. What I found most interesting is that these people who are Christian, who want to believe in, I guess, befriending your neighbor and being a good person, how can you then turn around and not allow the same for a group of people?
But in California, the vote was so close, and I was so shocked, you know, because California might be considered the gay central of North America.
It's still there's a Republican governor, Arnold Schwarzenegger, who, although he opposed Prop 8 because it was against a constitutional right that had already been granted, didn't want to change the Constitution, still is anti-gay marriage. He signed off twice on that issue.
But there are so many celebrities who were in opposition to Prop 8, and you would think that they would have great influence on the population.
I think there's a couple key things that happen, and one of them is, A, when you have a bill that is so wordy and so complicated, the general public doesn't necessarily understand whether they're voting yes or no. I mean, that was one issue that they were talking about, is people didn't know, okay, so am I saying yes, I support it, or no, I don't, or that got a little confusing.
It's a very personal issue. I mean, we know that they still, gay people still can have common law unions, so legally they're protected, but this is a personal issue of being able to be married.
Well, I actually went on the website of the Prop 8 organization, and they actually had a little educational ad, and it was talking about this married couple, and they didn't know how to vote. And they live beside, I think their name was Dan and Richie, who are a couple, and they're actually friends with them. And just because you're friends
they show them
with
little horns and a tail?
Well, actually, I was saying that just because you're friends with them and you have barbecues with them, it doesn't mean that you necessarily theoretically agree with defining marriage as between a man and a man. You can recognize that they have love in their relationship, and you can recognize the value of their relationship. But I think it's more of a principle as opposed to a personal thing.
So what were they on this Prop 8 site positing as the main, dangers of Dan and Richie getting married?
Well, they were saying that the danger is that they put an example in Massachusetts where it is legal for men and women to be married. Your teachers in grade 2 can then, without informing parents, read stories that are pro-gay marriage.
It's censorship, and it's taking away the freedoms of individuals. Is this realistic? I mean, if there are still common law gay couples, kids need to learn about that. That's not to say that every teacher is going to take the kids out to the gay pride parade once a year.
I will admit that at first I have grown up in a theater world. I have a lot of gay friends. I lived with gay roommates. But I wasn't convinced at that point that, is marriage just about a man and a woman? And it's interesting that years later, now my opinion has totally changed, and maybe it's because of media influence, maybe it's because now it goes to show that over a number of years you can get used to any concept. So at first I was like, man, woman, maybe that is the definition of marriage. And now how some of my gay and bisexual friends explained it to me, they're like, it's not about gender, it's about just loving someone.
Love,
it doesn't matter who that person is, loving their soul.
And that worldview of it being a man and a woman who are going to have kids together, and that's a marriage, that is a, let's say, Christian worldview or a Roman Catholic worldview.
Or actually Muslim as well.
Indeed. So how could you... how could you take away another person's worldview? Do you know what I mean?
Right. But then again, who invented the concept of marriage? I guess that's the whole thing, because the difference between a common law relationship and a marriage is why am I not satisfied with why do I need to fit into someone else's definition? If marriage was created by a religious society, why do I feel like I need to change that?
I guess there's a bunch of different levels. There's some people who just don't support gay marriage, and then you have the whole terrorist issue happening in Seattle
yeah.
with the 11 different gay bars being targeted. But I mean, that's that's hate crime towards any group that is.
I think that's one person who is obviously ill in the mind. I don't necessarily think that you can tie like this decision about Prop 8 into like violent behavior, although, you know, it is a slippery slope how policy will affect criminals.
Well, it's a single incident that, you know, got attention in the media, but it's not to say that there are not a lot of people that are crazy or not, or just have different moral views, that commit violence against homosexual people. It happens. So I guess enough people are scared of a Sodom and Gomorrah society that, you know.
So what I wonder what will happen is, like in Canada, if eventually enough talk over the years will change sentiments, or if this is something that's just ingrained in the core of many Americans.
Well, I guess
of a right-wing America.
The issue here is, should pop culture then dictate how we think? Because if that's the case, then, you know, things that we don't think are correct now might be okay in the future, like, for example, I don't know, pornography.
Right.
You know, and
pornography
it is, you know, because
there are limits.
Yeah, exactly. Or
even
child pornography. You know, you just never know where the freedoms and so I think democracy is still like important.
Important.
And so the fact is,
if people voted against, then
we have to
honor
Yeah.
that.
Yep.
So we'd like to hear what you have to say about Prop 8. Leave us a message, or you can email us, and we'd love to get in a dialogue with you. And I think the important thing is to have an opinion, because that's where, you know, you actually mold the future of this country and the culture of it.
Just keep the conversation going.